there's all these different ways that we can interpret and work with the dreams. Now, in Gestalt, the primary way that you work with dreams is you act as if every figure in the dream and every part of the dream, the landscape, the setting, the context, the people, the animals, is all a part of you. It's a part of yourself that is being acted out in this dramatized fashion that you're projecting onto a psycho-visual screen in your imagination. So you're experiencing the dream as the first person identity, and the that's what people tend to call the dream ego, or the whatever, the person that you're experiencing the dream as. And then there are the figures that are kind of placed either in alliance or opposition or neutrally to you, but those are actually not outside of yourself in this Gestalt way of thinking about it. They're a part of who you are. And so when you rework the dream after you wake up, the method in the Gestalt sense of things is to revisit the dream from each perspective and shift yourself into the different figures. Reimagine it from those perspectives, rewrite it, do a active dialogue between yourself and the rest of the dream from the perspective of the figures you're choosing. And then as you cycle through that, what's going to happen is you're going to start to gain clarity about what's actually happening here psychologically. What does this mean to me in this moment that I'm having this experience? Okay, so I'll give you an example. So a long time ago, I had a dream where I was back in elementary school, but it had also a college format. So it was a mix between elementary and college, and it was like childhood friends and acquaintances were there, but also college instructors, and this was during my undergrad. So I'm standing in this dream. This was a long time ago. I'm standing on this kind of waterfront beach area, and there's the teachers and the students. And the teachers are standing in front of us, teaching us, and we're all kind of presenting our essays. And they told me basically I didn't do my essay the right way. I didn't pay close enough attention. And then uh, at the very beginning of the water off the beach, there's these two giant boulders, okay? And then all of a sudden I get stuck in between these two giant boulders. And that was right after I had been critiqued on my essay. Okay, so then after that, school's out, and it's out for the summer, and we're all evacuating the premises. And one of the childhood acquaintances basically says something rude to me, like you're not doing this right, or I told you that's not the way you do it, or whatever. Okay, so simple dream, beach, outdoors, instructors, me, essay, not great, water, two boulders stuck between them, exit scene, more ridicule from a peer. The class out for the summer. Simple dream. Now, when you start looking at from the Gestalt perspective, what you do is you go into the different figures, like I said. So let's be the teacher. So what you would do is you would look at it. The teacher in me is not happy with the student in me in this particular situation. So there's a part of me saying, I'm not doing this right. And it could also be a critic. The teacher could also be a symbol for self-criticism. So depending on my individual associations with teachers, it could be a mentor, a critic, a helper, or an adversary. It just depends on the way that I constellate that symbol in my psyche. In this case, I think it's a combination between a mentor and an adversary. Right? There's the harsh self-critic in me, that doesn't ever think I'm doing good enough. That's saying that's not good enough. You're not doing that right. You're bullshitting your way through. Then there is the two boulders, which kind of represents it. There's irreconcilable conflicts within me. It reminds me of being between a rock and a hard place, would be being stuck in between two boulders, two very strong and solid forces. So that's showing in the dream that within the psyche there are two forces that are pinching energy, that are keeping me stuck within a certain context. So the obviously, what are the two forces that we're looking at in the dream? Well, self-explanatory. We're looking at the student and the teacher, the inner student and the inner teacher, the young boy puer and the rigid synex, the structured side of my personality and the open side of my personality. So so we're seeing this dynamic, and then being stuck between the two boulders kind of shows the tension that this dynamic creates within my personal psychology. Then we have the water. Okay, well, being water, what is water for me in the stream? Well, water, we'll bring in a little Jungian symbolism here. Strong emotion, deep mystery. Carl Jung would call it the depths of the unconscious. I would call it strong mystery, emotion, unknown territory. And we're just on the beach. So we're just on the edge of unknown territory. We're not deep in the middle of the ocean or at the depths of the lake. We're right on the edge of the unknown territory. So what is that saying to me? It's saying that there are strong yet unknown emotions occurring for me here that represent something big. So what the dream is saying is that there's a lot going on here in regards to the relationship between the young boy, the student, and the scholar, the organized part of myself. So you could look at it as order and chaos. You could look at it as openness and conscientiousness, okay? So what we're looking at is that we're constellating this tension within the dream. You can see how brilliant dreams can be to show us what's going on inside of us. And then, of course, there's the young woman, the young girl from elementary school who offers me further criticism. So that also, to me, as that critic, represents a strong relationship towards sensitivity. For me, the feminine side of myself that can be very sensitive to criticism, that can be very moody. Okay, so that we're looking at there's an aspect of sensitivity and moodiness that she kind of constellates. There's an aspect of conscientiousness and rigidity, wanting more structure and order, and there's an aspect of openness, exploration. And I remember in the dream, I just wanted to write the essay. Back in the early days of my undergrad, one of the things that I could often get away with is I could say a lot with a little bit of information. So I could get away with writing these elaborate papers having only done a little bit of research, because I could just continue to make associations and amplifications, and I could magnify the meaning. But there's this scholar inside of me in the dream, this teacher, that was a little critical, saying, I know what you're up to. I know that you're bullshitting, and it's not a passable thing. We can't pass you. So it was a sense of not having an inner approval from the more conscientious side of my personality. Okay, and then school's out. I get one last criticism, then school's out. So that's the release from the complex. Okay, so we'll go back to Jung now. A complex is a source of tension within the personality. We're made up of complexes, subpersonalities that are there is no life without complex. Everything is a complex, a source of tension and opposition that generates life, that generates movement. And so this school's out kind of releases the complex. It says, okay, there's a dissipation of energy here. There's a dissipation of intensity that happens. And so that might signify, again, this dream was years ago, so it might signify some foreshadowing within, Jung said oftentimes the psyche will know what's coming in a life process long before the individual really consciously talks about it and thinks about it. There's deep processes going on within us that sometimes we understand and sometimes we don't. So it could be a foreshadowing saying, okay, this has been the old story, the complex that you've been in, Ryan, and then the school's out is go out for the summer is a dissipation of that pattern or a dissipation of that strong opposition. So it could be saying this has been very intense for you. There's strong emotion here, but soon to come is a dissipation. That's one way that I could interpret that school being out phenomena. But there's that sense of it's dissipating with the lingering factor of criticism. You know, that the young girl who criticizes me on the way out the door. There's a sense of incompleteness to it. What I'm trying to show here is that you can actually look at the dream from this dynamic perspective where everything in it is a part of who you are. And it's showing you an inner dynamic. Okay? Often we take things literally, like it's showing us something about outside, right? We think dreams are indicative of some sort of objective reality out there. Now, those are very rare. You know, people may occasionally have synchronistic foreshadowing dreams about actual life events, but more often than not, our dreams are pretty psychological. That doesn't mean that there's not room for a visionary or metaphysical potential. It just means that might be an outlier. Most of the time, the dreams are saying about what's going on inside. And so even if we're having a dream about a significant other, like a partner, a spouse, a friend, any loved one, even though we're having that dream literally about that other person, it feels like it's actually not literal. It's metaphorical for a part of who we are. So who does my partner represent in me is the question. This is where you really need an understanding of your various subpersonalities. It's essential that you know, okay, so I have this inner lover, or I have this inner critic, or I have this warrior, right? Because if you can't see those figures within yourself, then you're stuck in a projection, right? And that's why Jung was so adamant that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will play out in your life, and you will call it fate. Something along those lines was his quote. Because if we don't create awareness around the dynamics of who we are, we end up projecting that outside and over literalizing psychological material. So with dreams, it's important to keep the metaphor in mind, keep the idea that all of this is representative of an inner landscape of emotions, and you can think of it as a salience landscape. What's valuable to me? What's threatening to me? The different parts of me that have different motivations at play here. And so, again, we'll revisit the dream from that perspective. The young, critical girl, sensitive and underdeveloped. Jung could call it an anima, an underdeveloped sensitivity and emotionality within the psyche that, when it's not paid close enough attention to, it kind of turns a critical face to us. Okay, that's one interpretation. The young boy, the puer, right? That he doesn't want to be structured. He wants to write his essays with these long, elaborate ideas, but he doesn't really want to bother to do the research and bring things down to ground. He doesn't want to really put in the dirt time. He just wants to be able to spit out some information in some theoretical musings and then be gone with it. The inner instructor, teacher / critic, the synex is the archetype there. It's often represented through Saturn, the old philosopher, the wise old man. saying, listen, no, like the wise old man is the Synex in its proper balance, but the hypercritical, rigid old man is the Synex when um, it doesn't have a healthy relationship with that young boy. So you see the figure of the young boy and the mentor often across mythology and psychology and many different places in life. Me and Dr. Strachan and I would be a fantastic example. But the point is that they both need each other. And James Hillman does a wonderful job writing about the Synex-Puer relationship. Puer is the Peter Pan, right? The eternal boy, the Puer Eternus. In any case, these two parts are being represented as parts of who I am, right? And I will tell you, I've identified I have a philosopher, and I have a teacher inside of me, and I have a workhorse that's very diligent and conscientious, as well as a young boy and a lazy bear, I like to call him. So you can see how the dream between the student and the instructor, the tension there, when the instructor is saying, that's not okay, you got to sit down and do work, and the boy saying, no, I just want to wander. So what it's saying is there's a issue here in the psyche where there's irreconcilable opposites between chaos and order. Okay, and the conflict is amplified and magnified by me being in between the two large stones. So when you're working a dream like this, you look at all these different things in the landscape, and you can see how as you just massage the images a little bit, and you just let them continue to marinate, and you kind of shift perspectives, the meaning becomes available without too much intellectual demand. You really can, just by attention, pay attention to what the dream is doing, and the meaning just suffuses within it. It just happens. So you don't have to, when you're doing a dream analysis, you don't have to overanalyze or be overly intellectual. Just play with the images. What's it like to be in between these two boulders? That's where the Gestalt therapy technique. What's it like? What does it feel like? What is it like to, what if you were the boulders? Be the boulder. What's it like to be the boulder? And you kind of picture it, you feel it, you engage your imaginal senses, and you can see the metaphors just become automatically available to you. Now, there's no denying that reading Jung and reading symbolism in mythology helps provide grist for the mill. It gives you tools. It gives you ways to see. It gives you opportunities for amplification, to make the images come alive more. But that's not necessary.
Thank you for watching this video from Sorting Myself Out. My name is Ryan Holsapple. We're going to continue to try to provide you with the best quality content possible. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can like, you can subscribe, and you can also leave a comment, hit that notification bell. I know that's a lot to ask, so any one of those things would be fantastic.